Hey there, everybody. Micah Curtis here. And up to the launch of Englewood Book 2, one thing I wanted to do was do a small series of writer diaries, basically talking about what it is that brought me to actually make this book, and then what's going into the second book, thematically speaking. Things that I've wanted to do from the get-go, and things that will be going on within the book itself. The first thing I wanted to talk about specifically was one particular idea that permeated my thinking when it came to designing the character of the Saint of Englewood, this hero that I created, and what I wanted to do with him. Now, in book 2, what will end up happening, what you will see, is exactly how he gets the name the Saint of Englewood. Now, here's something that needs mention. The name the Saint of Englewood is not one that Elijah Wallace actually chose for himself. You'll see the specifics of it, but the basic idea is that Chicago itself gave him the name. And the significance of that to me was I wanted to change things in regards to how your traditional superhero is looked at. I wanted to make the superhero of the modern age, but the difference between the superhero of the modern age and the way that the mainstream looks at it is basically they don't really think of things in a modern lens, as in how if you write a superhero in this day and age, how they would be constructed. They think of it from a political standpoint of how they should observe masculinity, how they should observe what it means to be a hero and things along those lines, and what they define as heroics through their own lenses, which is usually through a lens of progressivism. I'm old school. I'm one of those guys that looks at the way that they want to do modern heroes, and I scoff at it, because some things still work. Some things are still true. And those will be things that I talk about in other diaries. I'll be talking about masculinity. I'll be talking about, getting back to the basics of crime fighting, things along those lines. But in this particular case, when I wanted to craft the modern hero, I wanted a superhero that was basically crafted by the world around him. That he's a reaction to the world. Not just like what everybody thinks he should be, but what the circumstances of his life have created. So, I wanted to do a story set in Chicago. I wanted to do a story where we had a character that was basically almost the sports figurehead of that area. And I just thought to myself, what is it that could be done to make a modern Chicago superhero? Because I didn't want to make the Savage Dragon or anything like that. I hate the Savage Dragon these days. So instead, what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a street-level hero, a la a Batman or a Daredevil or Deathstroke or something. Well, Deathstroke's not a hero, but you guys get my drift. In fact, it was the Chicago issue of Christopher Priest's Deathstroke run that actually made me want to write this comic. And of course, many of you know Christopher Priest's Black Panther is a comic book that I still recommend to everybody. Those would be probably the two characters that inspire him the most. And when I thought to myself, it's like, how do I craft the modern superhero? How would I craft somebody that would be very well known in Chicago? Well, Chicagoans, we tend to idolize sports heroes. Not that other cities don't, but we really do. I mean, Coach Ditka, Walter Payton, Mike Singletary, The Fridge, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. The list goes on. We really, they become a part of the city, even if they're not from there, or even if they don't live there anymore. They're a part of the city's legend. And that, I think, is, something that, at least when I was growing up in the area, made it feel so unique to me. Not to mention, when I was growing up there, the Bulls were the biggest thing in the world. The White Sox were doing pretty okay too. And yes, I am from the part of town where it's a White Sox neighborhood. It's not a Cubs neighborhood. But regardless, I wanted to make a sports hero. But I didn't want to just make him like a baseball player or something like that. I needed somebody who was trained in combat. On the flip side, though, I didn't want to have just another military guy. Because let's be honest about something. Whenever somebody on the indies tends to create a character, they tend to go military. And I'll admit, there's some characters that I've got coming up that are military as well. I'm not going to lie to you. Because it's an easy way to explain combat training. But I've always also been fascinated by characters like Iron Fist, like Shang-Chi, like Richard Dragon. And these types that are martial arts purists, in a sense. And I'm like, how would I do that in the modern day? And then I started thinking about this, because if you look at the modern day, what is the biggest thing going in martial arts? What's the one thing that's getting everyone into it? Well, it's MMA and the UFC, specifically. And when you look at mixed martial arts fighters, you're going to find people that will have belt ranks in more than one discipline, usually in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and karate or some other form of striking. Most Muay Thai practitioners don't do belt ranks. The only one that I can think of that actually does, I can't recall his name, but it's Wanderlei Silva's old school shoot-a-box trainer. Ronaldo something or other, I think is his name. I can't remember. Somebody will probably put it in the comments. But he's the only one I can think of that actually gives out a belt rank for his students. But regardless, you're going to find people that are experts at several combat disciplines, and they are basically the modern versions of these types of characters, if you think about it. Because to be able to master boxing, kickboxing, specifically, Muay Thai, and then different forms of Muay Thai, because you've got the Muay Thai that is practiced by, sort of like a K1 style, I guess you could call it. There's almost like a Brazilian style Muay Thai from the shoot-a-box realm. And then, of course, from Thailand itself, there's a different way of doing things as well. You've got that. You've got different forms of jiu-jitsu, Japanese and, of course, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. There's also judoka, like Ronda Rousey, and before her, people like Karo Parisian. You've got a lot of people that have an expertise in so many disciplines that they almost fit the role of someone like a Richard Dragon or someone like a Lady Shiva. In the sense it's like they're good everywhere. They can do, it seems they can do everything, whenever it comes to combat. So I said to myself, this is the way to do it. In this day and age, if you're going to make a martial arts expert, the way to do it is through MMA, So I said to myself, who do I base this guy on? Okay, so he's going to be from Illinois, but if he's going to be the kind of guy that's going to be strong and fast enough and all this other stuff to take on a bunch of guys at once and have musculature, I can't really have him be like a lightweight. I can't have him be like a Jose Aldo. Well, he's a featherweight, but you get my drift. Or a Conor McGregor. Like, those are really small guys. I needed somebody with size. So I thought back to heavyweights. Heavyweights that aren't massive, but are big enough and fast enough that they're honestly frightening. Not quite like a Brock Lesnar, even though Brock Lesnar is big and fast enough to be frightening. But I thought of someone of a smaller build, like a Junior Dos Santos, or Curtis Blades, Alistair Overeem, as he is right now. He used to be bigger than he is currently, believe it or not. But, and then, of course, the current heavyweight champion, Stipe Miocic. Guys who weigh about 240, but they're about 6'4". They're big, intimidating figures that are chiseled dudes, but they're not bodybuilder big, As such, I find, the ability to keep that sort of heroic build without really going too crazy in regards to it. But when it came to the people who would influence his fighting style, I thought of people like Fedor Emelianenko, because you'll notice in issue 1 that he primarily uses punches up until he uses a certain kick to break Carlos's leg. But I also thought of someone like John Jones and Daniel Cormier, which is why the lead character, he actually has a wrestling base. And of course you see in the early pages of Englewood that he actually scored big points in a fight by basically slamming his opponent. You see him German suplexing a German guy. So that's a little thing. And yes, I will say right now to you guys that are out there, I will definitely be having him slam more people in the future, slam them through tables and things like that. So there will be lots of fun little wrestling bits on top of the striking. Trust me, it's just about finding the right situation for it as a writer. But it will be coming, so be patient with me. But anyway, so in crafting the modern superhero, that's the big question, is where do they come from? On top of that, I had to do some kind of research into how the modern armor that somebody at the street level would be wearing would be made. Because you look at a lot of the modern designs of particular superheroes. You look at, Daredevil in the Netflix series. You look at Batman in the Dark Knight. What you find is that they take the old school spandex, which is easy to draw, and they change it around a bit into a sense of armor plating. Oddly enough, when I first started really seeing this, and I really took notice, was when I played the Batman Arkham games, specifically Arkham Asylum, and I noticed that Batman's batsuit, at a glance, looks like the old spandex, but when you look closer at it, you'll see certain riveting on it, and you kind of realize that that's actually Kevlar, or some sort of anti-ballistic mesh that's meant to protect against blunt force trauma. And that's what I researched, and that's how I came up with his suit and how it would work specifically. And basically, being an old Iron Man fan as well, I'm like, I really would like to have a way that he could basically keep it in a backpack. So it's basically just something he can slip on in an alleyway and then throw it on really quickly to stop a robbery or something along those lines if he happens to be there. I've always liked that sort of a thing. So, basically fashion plus function. So in crafting the modern superhero, a lot of it is just more so this idea of trying to craft a character and trying to make them look interesting to the eye, but not be so spandexy in a sense. Because he's got to have protection. And I wanted it to have that sort of a feel to it, that he is protected. He's got this armored shell, and as such, that's the look. And oddly enough, the armor that he wears is actually tied into the universe as a whole, as you guys will see with another book that I've got coming out called Project Lazarus. So, when it comes right down to it, the real crafting of a modern hero is not about politics. It's not about anything along those lines. It's about finding the modern solution to the old school questions. How do they fight? What's their costume going to look like? How is it going to function? Why is it going to function the way that it does? Things along those lines. How do you make it in this day and age? What would they look like? And I think that the Saint of Englewood, in a lot of ways, is the answer to that. How does he become as skilled as he is? Well, he's a martial artist, and he's a mixed martial arts champion. He was never beaten. So basically what makes him the best in the world at what he does is the fact that he proved it in an octagon. How did he get his name? It's given to him by the community. It's not something he chose. It's something that he fell into, partially because of the tragedy that he befalls in the original issue, but also the reaction to it. And how exactly is he going to look? What is going to make him different than the Batmans and the daredevils of old. Well, he's going to have armor. He's going to have a different way of looking at the technology. He's going to, just look different. He's going to come across as more prepared for it. Maybe it's a little utilitarian. I can understand that. But I think that he's able to be both utilitarian and eye-catching. So, needless to say, I'm very much of the belief that in a lot of ways that's what I succeeded in doing with Englewood issue 1. And I honestly could not be more excited to get this second book started, bring an end to the first arc, and then we can really open up this universe in a sense and kind of show you what the street level of Chicago looks like in the world of the Saint of Englewood. So that brings an end to Englewood Writer Diary number 1. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do me a favor, hit the like button if you enjoyed this. Let me know if there's other things that you would like me to discuss in regards to it, though I do have other episodes planned, and there's other questions I can always answer, so that's not a big deal. But anywho, like, subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time, my name is Micah Curtis. Watch this space for when the mailing list drops, and we will see you guys next time.